And now, live from Hong Kong, it's Late Night with Goldthread. Our host, Clarissa Wei, with special guest, Nicholas Ko. It's Late Night with Goldthread. Might not actually be nighttime.
Hey everyone, welcome to our live stream this week. I'm Clarissa Wei, I'm one of the senior reporters here at Goldthread, and today I'm with Nicholas Ko, who is one of our producers. So I'm going to be interviewing Nick about his personal journey, and I also wanted to know some camera tricks because that's something I'm interested in learning about. So Nick, let's talk about your journey. Why did you decide to join Goldthread?
Goldthread is actually a really lucky chance that I had. I started I was a videographer for the past year, and I was working in a local firm, and then all of a sudden our leader in Goldthread, Victoria, she messaged me and she's like, I really like your work, I wish that you could be on my team, and I decided to take the leap and come try it out. And I really like the idea behind Goldthread.
Cool. Yeah, let's play one of Nick's work. Let's show the Nongjala video. They'll cue it up soon. But I really like Nick's style.
Serving a meal for us is his pleasure, and it's something that he's in control. It was really, really fun working with that piece.
Cool. So what was your process when you were shooting it? And for people who are just joining us, this is our live stream. I'm interviewing Nick, and if you have any questions, just comment in the comment section below, and we'll try to answer them as this stream goes on. But yeah, when you're in the jungle, it's kind of stressful. There are mosquitoes everywhere. We're climbing up on a hill. How do you focus on getting the shots that you want?
You just really have to pay attention to the surrounding. And like you said, mosquitoes are the worst, and you can't really do anything about them. You really have to be prepared to spray some mosquito sprays, or else you just couldn't focus at all. And other than that, how I focus was I really get a sense of the surrounding. What is our subject like? The way he talks, the way he walks, everything matters. That you pay attention, and then you can go and capture what matters to the shot.
And
Does that make sense?
what about your editing process? Do you find the music first? How do you find the mood?
For me, the editing process, I don't really have a logic behind it. I just do a lot of things throughout my feelings. So let's say the piece that we just showed, as I said, I feel like that farmer is very in control of the environment, and as a host, he is way more familiar to the forest than us. So I feel like he's almost like a demigod looking over us and serving us a really nice meal. That's why the video is kind of like a little bit trippy, but also cute at the same time, because we saw him talking on the phone. He's also like a normal human being like all of us. There's something mysterious about him. That's what I'm trying to portray.
Cool. And one thing I've noticed with Nic as we go on the trips, Nic has been the guy who's been on with me on the last couple of trips, is that he gets really emotionally attached to our sources. So last trip we went to was Yunnan, the mushroom town. We can cue that up whenever. And Nic got really attached to our sources, but I think that makes for good footage. So Nic, tell us a little bit. Okay, cool. So this story is about a mushroom town called Nanhua. It's in just about an hour bullet train ride away from Kunming, which is the capital of Yunnan, and it has one of the most biodiverse mushroom markets in the entire province. And Nic and I were there about 3 weeks ago interviewing people, and I had been to Yunnan before, but this is Nic's very first time. So what were your thoughts about this trippy mushroom town?
Okay, so when we first got there, I didn't believe that. How could there ever be a mushroom town, right? It just sounds so Alice in Wonderland. But then we got there, and I look at the buildings, mushroom graffitis are everywhere. Even the tribes there, some of the, because like, what were the tribes? The Wa people? Is that?
Most people there are Yi minority.
Yeah, Yi minority. Yeah, even them embrace the whole mushroom culture, and it's just such a cultural shock for me, because I've never imagined something like that would happen. All these people, they depend their economic and income from foraging mushrooms. And mushroom is something that you can't farm. That is something that I learned from a trip. You can't farm mushroom in that particular town. So their income really depends on the weather of the year and how much they forage. And I remember meeting this fixer. He was telling us that the weather wasn't that good, and for some reason the mushroom isn't growing as crazy as previous years. That really bothers them, and yeah, and I just feel so like the whole thing is so real, and we thought that we could perhaps like fantasize the whole thing into mushroom town when people love eating mushroom, but then when we talk to them it's just part of the living. They don't even think about it. Yeah,
so that's something with stories, right? When we're here in the office, we conceive of a story based on the facts and pre-reporting, but it's a completely different animal when we're out there in the fields. And for this trip, we were supposed to go foraging with one of our sources, but this guy drank with him until really late in the morning, and yeah, bad things happened.
Well, I was trying to save you, you know.
Nah, it wasn't that dramatic. But yeah, so Yunnan Mushroom Town. Let's move on to some camera tricks you have for people. So let's talk about how long have you been using the camera? What are the most surprising things that you've learned, and what are your tips to people who are just picking up a camera and kind of want to get to the level that you and our other guy Mario are at?
Well, I picked up my camera when I was in university. I took a course in my art degree, and ever since I just really want to experiment with my camera. And I still think that I have a lot of room for improvement, but if you ask me like what to pay attention on a shoot, I would say is the story that comes with it, you know. You could pick up a camera, a really nice lens, and shoot a lot of beautiful things on set. But then by the end of the day, when you edit it, you will sometimes figure out that, oh man, this shot that I got doesn't really fit into the story at all. So when a tip that I would say is to really pay attention to the interview and get what's really useful to the video eventually, instead of just grabbing pretty things. Yeah.
What about framing? You like to kind of use pillars or objects to frame things.
Yeah. I really like symmetries, and I like things in balance. So when I point my camera at something, I will try to find horizontal and vertical lines just to align the whole frame so that it doesn't look distorted. Because once you shot something that's distorted, you can't really fix it. Yeah.
Cool. And you're also really good at adding color to things that might otherwise be mundane. So let's roll the milk tea clip, and then you can tell us after it rolls what the process was behind that.
Sure.
Okay, what happened with that? I was not at the shoot. There's a man with a crop top. Yeah. What happened on the shoot?
This actually was shot in a restaurant that I love going back in the days. And this uncle right there, he loves us because we always go there and shoot because he is such a character. And we were shooting a story about Hong Kong's milk tea. And he just dived into it. He loved doing it. And the guy in red was his brother. He was a really shy guy, and I thought that he popped his head wanting the attention was really cute. So I was like, why don't I make something out of it? So it's his action is almost like a anime to me, like Japanese anime to me. So I thought, man, I have to make this.
Yeah. I mean, that's something I've noticed when I'm on shoots with you guys. We're really immersed in what's happening, and I also think because we look like we're children, people are more willing to be more candid with us and give us these authentic moments. For example, in the Mushroom Town, we were at a bar. This was after the shoot had wrapped, and we were sort of off the clock, but Nick and I were just talking to these local people about mushrooms, and all of a sudden this guy gets excited, jumps out of his chair, grabs his camera, and sets it up in the middle of the bar. And that was some of our best sound bites, just because we blend in so well in Asia. Cool. Let's talk to you about, and again, if anyone has any questions for Nick, please ask, or me, ask in the comments below. But what are some of your tricks when you're on a shoot, it's really noisy, but we only have a set number of minutes, and there's say construction workers in the background? How do you alleviate that situation?
This is something I learned from my trip to Shanghai, which was pretty cool. It's something small, but it's really useful. So that time we were shooting a bubble tea store, and there was construction right beside it. It was really loud, and we couldn't figure out what to do. And then the owner of the bubble tea store, he just walked up to the construction workers. He handed them a cigarette, each one of them a cigarette, light them up for them, asked them politely to, just take a rest, take a break. We're trying to shoot something. Enjoy this expensive cigarette, in a really respectful way. And the bubble tea owner he is pretty wealthy, and he doesn't have that vibe at all. So what I get from this is you really have to make good with everyone around it in order to have the best environment to shoot. So no matter how stressful the environment is, you really need to take a step back, try to settle everyone, because on set everybody is stressful.
Yeah.
And how do you deal with stress is very key to a good video.
Yeah, that's sort of the biggest learning curve for me too, because traditionally I did more articles, but now I'm on these shoots. And on our last shoot, Nic actually taught me how to use one of our in-house cameras, and it was so hard to be able to focus on the story and get the shot and hold those heavy cameras. Like, tell everyone about what happened to your arm.
It was so stupid. So I decided to. I don't even remember how I broke my arm. I think I just fell or something. Right the day before I went to Shanghai, and then my arm was all swelled up. I couldn't bend or stretch my arm. So if George is watching, he would know how bad it is. George is a really good freelancer that I work with in Shanghai. I had to basically train up my left arm to shoot. The shot ended up okay, I think. I hope. I'm still waiting for products. But yeah, and recently, after 2 months, I just discovered that my bone is fractured. So that is something really dumb of myself. And I don't hope this happened to anyone.
Yeah, it's not just when we're out there. It's not just holding a camera and pointing it at the reporter or the subject. You really have to be mindful of what's going on. Poor Nic, I've made him climb a lot of hills with heavy equipment and
on the side of the high road.
On the side of the random road. We were in a town and I was desperate to get mushroom shots, and our source had bailed on us. We get out of a taxi. I look up at a hill and I just start walking towards that hill with the taxi driver, and Nic freaks out. He's like, "Where are we going? Do you even know if there are mushrooms there?" We did find the mushrooms, and that story is coming out soon. For those of you guys who just joined, we're doing a live stream. This is Nicholas Ko. He's one of our producers. He's also behind the camera most of the time. So this is your perfect time to ask questions about, camera tricks, how he produces a story, and what his thought processes are. Okay, so we have a bit of time left, so selfishly, I'm going to ask you about Hong Kong, because I personally have just moved to Hong Kong within the last couple of months, but Nic was born and raised here. But you spent quite a significant time in Canada. So, for people who are curious about Hong Kong, what do you love about this city, and why did you come back from Canada?
Man, Hong Kong to me is we have such a love-hate relationship with Hong Kong. Well, before the live, you asked me what is intriguing about Hong Kong. I couldn't think of anything, but at the same time, I know that there's a lot of special things to shoot about Hong Kong. If I have to say something about Hong Kong that I like, it's the people. The people are really rude here.
Yeah, and so for context, Nic is trilingual. He can speak obviously English. He's fluent in Cantonese, and he can do Mandarin. And so I can't speak Cantonese, so I don't really know what's going on when you're talking to the locals. What's the dynamic like?
Yeah, so as I was saying, Hong Kong people are really angry all the time and rude, just because we have so little space, and people don't know about what do you call this? The personal space.
Boundaries,
boundaries, and because of that, if you vibe with some locals, they really appreciate you. So you just have to get really down to earth with them. Don't try to be cunning with them at all.
Yeah,
because they are way more cunning than you.
There's a funny story. When we were in Yunnan, we were taking a bullet train out, and Nick had never... That was your first time taking a bullet train, right? And I was like, okay, Nick, just to warn you, people here don't really observe personal boundaries. This might be a little intense. So we go through the line process. Of course, there's, people just an inch close to us and, like, pushing, and Nick is like, I don't get it. This is exactly like Hong Kong. What's the difference, though, between mainlanders and Hong Kong people, though, in your opinion?
Hong Kong people, I think, is more passive-aggressive. So if you're trying to shove in the subway, for example, they wouldn't just yell at you or push you away. They would just give you really bad looks and makes you feel guilty about it. But that's like everyday life in Hong Kong, And you can't really do anything about it. But getting into this shooting industry made me realize that this is a really fun game to play, how to make these angry, rude people like you and let you shoot them. This is a really, really, it really speaks to my root in a way.
Yeah. And when you first started this job, you didn't really spend that much time in the mainland, right? And then you went on the Chengdu trip and then Yunnan. And you seem to be really enamored by mainland China. Why is that? Whereas everyone else, I've been in mainland China for so long, I'm a little sick of it. But you seem to fall more and more in love with mainland China the more we go. Why is that?
Well, growing up in Hong Kong, obviously there's a lot of conflict between like Hong Kong and mainland, all that. And I've always wanted to experience mainland myself, seeing things from the first-person point of view. And for example, let's use the Sichuan as an example. It really blew my mind because Sichuan people are just so chill. It's almost like Toronto, Canada. They love music, they love to chill, they love food. And I eventually even got hooked with spicy food, the numbness of it. And then someone told me that you have to look at China as almost like Europe. So different provinces of China is like different countries in Europe. So cultures are so different there. I've been to Shanghai. It's almost like Hong Kong. So different from Sichuan. And then our recent trip to Kunming is also a very different experience. Kunming is very close to the border of China. So you get a lot of diversity of the races. So yeah, it's like going on backpacking in Europe to me. It's very fun.
And then so Victoria asks, have you met any interesting people in mainland China?
Man, can I talk about Daima?
Yeah, you can talk about Dama. Okay, so for context, Dama is one of our sources and fixers in Yunnan, where he took us to the mushroom town. So tell us a little bit about Dama.
Man, this guy. So this is a really cool guy. He owns a mushroom process factory. He was the guy that was supposed to be taking us to the mountains and forage. But the night before we got really into like socialing, chatting, he really wants to show us his social group. So he brought us to this bar and we start drinking. And then he had a few whiskey or vodka or something.
He had a lot of drinks.
Yeah.
So for context, it's me, Nick, and our source and friend, I guess, at a bar. We're drinking. It's about 10 p.m. at night. I wanted to go home, so I was like, I'm going to go home. And it took a little bit of convincing, but eventually he was like, okay, fine, I'll have my friend drive you home. But he's like, but Nick has to stay. And of course I look at Nick and I'm like, you can say no at any time. And what was your response?
But then I look at Dama and he was so full of passion. He said, Nick, brother, you have to stay. So how can I say no to that?
And so fundamentally this is like cultural differences, right? I would say I am probably more westernized than Nick is. And in Chinese culture, when you're in a business or a professional situation or even a casual situation with friends, when someone who treats you or takes you out insists that you stay or insists that you drink the gaoliang or the baijiu, you do it. And
so
or
I did it.
If they give you a cigarette, you take it and you smoke it. And so this guy goes along with that. Exactly. He never says no. Whereas I, have learned over the years to put my foot down and be like, no, I need to go to sleep. And no, this is ridiculous. I'm going home. We're working right now. We can't just stay out. So I leave. I depart the party. And Nick stays till 2 a.m. in the morning. And then tell everyone what happened.
And then long story short, we end up in a restaurant. I convinced him to leave.
He ate a cow nipple.
Oh yeah, somewhere between the line.
I get a text at 1 a.m. in the morning from this guy, and he's like, I just ate a cow nipple.
Tastes like beef jerky. It's not that bad.
Okay, continue.
Okay, so my dumbass thought that he could handle driving at that time, and then I helped him up the restaurant. He couldn't walk in a straight line, but he got in a car. So, I was kind of drunk, but I'm still assessing the whole situation, right? I was like, okay, so the hotel is 5 minutes away. This is such a small town. The roads are so wide open. This should be fine. 2 minutes in the car, he crashes.
So, recap. This guy gets in a car with a guy who is really drunk. Essentially, he gets in a drunk driving car accident, but it's a minor fender bender, if you will, because he's going 5 miles per hour and makes a U-turn and hits the curb, but he busts his tire, right? Yeah. He busts his tire. Nick is only 5-minute walking distance from the hotel. So as dramatic as this sounds, literally it was not that dramatic, but you should not have even been in that situation in the first place. And then what happened? Started raining, right?
Yeah, and then it rains, and then we stayed in a car, and then we talked, and he kind of realized that he screwed up, and he was like, sorry, brother, sorry. And I was like, it's okay. Why don't you just come back to my hotel and spend a night there, just to clear your mind? And he was like, no, I don't want to. I can take care of myself. And then his wife started calling in the middle of this whole thing. And then they were doing FaceTime, I think. And I just thought, okay, I have to get out of here.
This is 1:30 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah, so I tried to pull him back to my hotel because there's no way he can just stay there on the street like that, right? And then he managed to call his friend to pick him up. So I ended up walking back to my hotel alone in the rain.
And then the next morning, I got a message from this guy, and he's like, we have to meet at the lobby at 8:30 because someone's going to pick us up and take us to the mushroom.
They were so convincing.
Take us to the mushroom mountain. And so, for context, this next day, we were going to go up to the mountains, which is what I was the most excited for in this entire trip. Go up into the mountains and find wild mushrooms. But because of what happened the night before, I had already come to terms with the fact that that was likely not going to happen the way that we had anticipated because our source got drunk, crashed his car, and was probably still really hungover. But this guy still insisted that someone at 8:30 was going to pick us up. So in the morning, I asked Nick, who's going to pick us up? And he says, a guy named Dayan, which translates to big brother. A guy named...
Big Eye.
Big Eye. Okay, a guy named Big Eye was going to pick us up at 8:30, who also happened to be a government official, and take us to a mountain to find mushrooms.
He was really convincing. I gave him my trust.
That's the problem. Anyways, no one picks us up, obviously. So we go get breakfast, and we just find a taxi driver and convince him to take us. But moral of the story, just don't do that anymore.
The taxi driver was really good though.
Yeah, the taxi driver was cool.
We were like, okay, we're trying to find this hill to forage some mushroom. You want to come with? And he's like, okay. And then he just started walking with us.
And that's part of the charm of mainland China, I will say, especially the places that are a little bit off the beaten path, is that people are rather simple. And I know I'm generalizing here, but we're just like two random kids with big backpacks. We hop in a taxi driver's car and we're like, we really just want to see mushrooms. And this guy, bless his heart, drives us 40 minutes out and is even willing to climb a mountain with us. And he didn't really know that much about mushrooms. He was able to point out one or two edible ones, but he just thought it was really funny and decided to go along with it. So Dolly asks, hi Dolly, how many mushrooms did you find and where did they go? Where did they go? What does that mean? Okay, we ended up finding only one variety of edible mushrooms, but this entire town has 40 varieties of mushrooms. So honestly, we didn't find a lot because
we didn't go to the right mountain.
We didn't go to the right mountain. All right, cool. So we're going to wrap up. If anyone has any last questions for Nick, let us know. Victoria asks, was the cow nipple fried?
Honestly, I don't even know. I can't remember because I just ate it.
Actually, I want to ask you a food question. I can change the table. So what has been your most favorite dish in mainland China during our travels?
It has to be sweetwater noodle. So it
甜水面. It's a Chengdu specialty.
It's so good. So they serve you with this thick noodles, pour sugar and soy sauce on it, and it just tastes really good, especially in a really hot city. Yeah.
Cool. Christy asks, did we pay extra for the taxi driver's mushroom picking for you guys? No, we just paid him the fee to take us to the mountain and back, and he was honestly out of the kindness of his heart. Also, he just seemed really bored, right? When we found him, he was just like napping on the street. And when we stopped by the side of the road, where we were going to go foraging, he like walks to the back of his trunk, pops it open, and he has a one hat. It's his adventure hat. It's so cute.
It's a Heisenberg hat.
Yeah, he just had an adventure hat, and he was telling us like, I don't really get to do this much because all I do is just drive people around this town. So you know what? We made his day.
And I got him on camera, so stay tuned for the video.
Yeah. So this person asks, have you been to Xin Jiang? Xin Jiang, I personally have. It was one of the most amazing experiences of my life. I went about 3 years ago. There's this town called Turufan or Turpan, and it's the lowest point in China, and it's so hot that you can like see heat waves emanating from the ground, and the buildings are kind of built out of mud, right? And it's also an oasis. There are grapes everywhere. They produce some of the biggest, remember those big grapes that you fell in love with in China? That's where they produce those grapes. And the people there are Uyghur. And so how does the hottest place in China produce the juiciest grapes in China? And it's through these ancient irrigation systems that the people dug over the years to route water from glaciers like hundreds of miles away in order to do that. So Xinjiang was amazing. I also managed to go to the border of China and Afghanistan, which was beautiful, and stayed in yurts. So, yeah, good times.
Yeah. Do you want to give a heads up of what's our upcoming trips?
Yeah, so upcoming trips, that's a really good, and then we'll wrap up unless anyone has any last questions. We will be wrapping up soon. So our upcoming trip, actually I should probably tell you because you're going to be coming with me to it. We're going to be going to Taiwan, and that's where my family is from and where I have a lot of attachment to. And it's actually Ghost Month, everyone. The month of August is Ghost Month, and the gates of hell, I'm not making this up, the gates of hell opened a couple days ago. And it's kind of the, they have Day of the Dead in Mexico, right? And this is basically the Chinese version. Actually, do they celebrate it here in Hong Kong as well?
Yeah, I think they do, yeah.
Yeah, so the gates of hell have just opened, and the thought process is that now all the ancestors and the ghosts from the past, they're on their summer vacation, and they're here in the living world, hanging out with their relatives. And so all over Taiwan and Hong Kong, I suppose, the temples have laid out food, and the ghosts are celebrating, partaking of that, and the gates of hells will close in a couple of weeks. So I really want to shoot some stories about this ghost month because I had no idea about it until I moved here, and I think it's absolutely fascinating, but it's also a tradition that's fading away. I was talking to one of our reporters, Timmy, who spent his entire life in Taiwan, and he's like, I don't know anything about it. That's just a time where I can go and get free candy from the streets. So yeah, we'll be doing that. We'll also be featuring 2 indigenous tribes, one of which I consider my host family. I've lived with them for about a month. And the other one is Sima Gusi, which is one of the more remote tribes in Taiwan. One of the other upcoming stories, is the Sky Lantern Festival and sort of the environmental repercussions of that. And if anyone out there has any stories in the Greater China area, whether or not that's Hong Kong, China, Taiwan, please let us know. We're always looking for leads. Right now, I'm just going with the people I've met in my travels, and we have connections and freelancers all over, but some of the best stories that I have gotten in the past come from, my Facebook friends or Facebook fans and Twitter followers and whatnot. Cool. So unless there are any questions, we will be wrapping up right now. Thank you everyone for staying and watching this live stream. If you have any suggestions for future live streams or topics you want us to cover, please let us know. We actually do monitor our social media accounts very, very closely, like the millennials we are. Great. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.
You've been watching Late Night with Goldthread. Thank you, and come again.